It was a deep, dark night in the forest. Winter had blown in from the north early that year, crowning the leaden ground with thick frosts. Under a sharp sky of stars stood the forest, barren and brittle. Somewhere between its lonely trunks was the Holly King. The Holly King was a fearsome creature. He was covered in deeply rutted bark, which was home to tiny creatures with many legs. A small robin hopped around him, pecking the lice and spiders out of his deep wooden veins. The sharp edges of his leaves glittered in the frosty air, and deep rumbling breaths echoed between his splinter teeth. This time of year, the time of frosts and darkness, belonged to the Holly King. He had been growing in strength and stature since his birth on the longest day of summer, which was also the day he fought for control of the kingdom. His reign had been one of the most auspicious of any Holly King. He had brought forest fires and drought, followed by terrible storms and floods. He had persuaded the north wind to ravage the land while the trees were still golden with autumn, destroying the fruits and berries that creatures needed to survive the long, dark days of his rule. The Holly King knew that the day was coming when the old Oak King's son would challenge him for his throne, bringing life and warmth back to the frozen kingdom. The story was so old that it passed into legend. On the shortest day, when the Holly King's powers were at their peak, the newborn Oak King would fight and defeat him. Then, on the longest day, the newborn Holly King would fight and defeat the reigning Oak King. And so the cycle had continued for as long as the trees could remember. There had been legendary battles between the Oak and Holly Kings of old, tales of daring maneuvers and thrilling contests. One Holly King, Tiny the Terrible, had raised an entire forest against a newborn King of Oak, but still ended up slaughtered in the bright red blood of his own berries. The King of Oak grew up to become Dwyer the Magnificent, who persisted over the most bountiful summer of any king, but even he was slaughtered by the next Holly King on the longest day. And so it had been every year, and so it would be until the end of time. But not this year. This year, the Holly King would be ready for the challenger. This year, he would fight to defeat the King of Oak, keeping the kingdom in perpetual winter. He just had to wait for the right day. On the darkest day of the year, the little robin who lived among his branches returned to the king and whispered that he had found the newborn oak child in a far-off frosty glade. The Holly King took up his blackthorn cudgel and, led by the robin, headed deep into the forest to find his challenger. As he strode through his kingdom, the frozen ground cracked and crumbled beneath his mighty feet. Trees cowered and shivered as he passed, shrinking from the flurries of snow which swirled in his wake. Any that found themselves in his path were crushed beneath his warlike rage. The king strode into the glade, ready to fight the new Oak King to the death. But the glade was empty. Had the robin lied to him? Had the oak child hidden itself, afraid to fight? Or was it some kind of trap? The Holly King cried,
"Face me, child of oak."
But there came no reply. Then, from a darkened corner of the glade, was a quiet sob. The Holly King turned and saw the oak child lying on the icy grass, with the robin hopping around its head. The oak was small and weak, not yet able to pull itself fully from its acorn. It was truly a pathetic specimen of a tree, weakened by the floods and storms the Holly King had brought. The Holly King exposed his splintered teeth in a ferocious smile and whispered,
"This is going to be easy."
He would do what no other Holly King in legend had done. He would defeat this pathetic oak child, and the kingdom would remain in the depths of winter darkness for an entire year. He took 3 mighty strides across the glade and towered above the infant oak. The baby wept and raised its pathetic branches in a sad attempt to protect itself. The Holly King laughed, raising the cudgel high above his head, ready to smash the sapling to pieces. And in that moment, the Holly King remembered his own birth on the longest day, how he had leapt from the blood and berries of his father and rolled into the pollen-filled grass. He remembered feeling the earth buzz and ripple between his roots, how the sun had brought a warm sheen to his dark, young leaves. He closed his eyes and remembered the heat of the sun on his bark. The air that day seemed to dance with life. He had heard the sounds of trees full of leaves, not cracking and creaking in a winter blizzard, but singing gently in the joyous breeze. He saw the helpless, wailing oak child at his feet and mourned those endlessly bright days which would never return. A dim flicker of light, of promise, ran through the oak child's tiny branches. The Holly King took a deep breath and brought the cudgel down hard, burying it deep in the ground near where the oak child lay. He helped the infant out of the acorn and called the birch trees to stand around the child to nurse it through to spring.
I will be back
Said the Holly King.
when the night and day are in balance, not to fight, but to give you my kingdom to fill with light and love.
And the Holly King was true to his word. As he grew older, his powers diminished and the grip of winter weakened. Warm breezes blew in from the south, and the days began slowly to grow longer. At the same time, when day was in balance with night, when the trees began to bud and blossom, the aging Holly King slowly made his way back to the glade. He leaned heavily on a blackthorn tree to support him, and the little robin hopped in front to herald his approach. The weakling child had grown into a fine oak tree, beautiful of limb and radiant with light. The oak helped the aging Holly King into the middle of the glade, and in the rays of the warming sunshine, the Holly King removed his crown. He whispered,
Remember what I have done for you, and when light and dark are in balance again, hand over your kingdom to the child who will grow from the blood of my berries.
The young oak agreed and announced that the days of kings and conflicts were over. From that point onward, the children of oak and holly would be guardians of the land, not rulers of it. As the Holly King's final breath rumbled between his splinter teeth, the robin picked a single berry from his burrows and flew with it into the forest so that a new holly child would be born and the story could continue. The oak child was true to his word, as were every oak and holly after them. They passed the land peacefully between each other on the days of balance between light and dark, the holly assuming guardianship at the autumn equinox and the oak in the spring. And so it has been every year since the fearsome Holly King saved the oak child, and so it shall be until the end of time. This traditional story was adapted by Moonbook's author Andrew Anderson, whose other work you can find on our website right now. Thank you very much for watching. A special thank you to our members. Subscribe and ring the bell to get all the latest from us, and we will see you next time.